Jeffrey Lionel Dahmer was born on May 21, 1960, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Joyce and Lionel Dahmer. His early years seemed normal, but subtle signs of anxiety and unusual behavior emerged. Joyce Dahmer suffered from anxiety and depression during her pregnancy and after Jeffrey's birth, which may have contributed to his early developmental issues. Lionel Dahmer, a chemist, worked long hours, often away from home, leaving Jeffrey primarily in his mother's care. As a toddler, Jeffrey exhibited signs of withdrawal and anxiety. His parents reported him being a happy child, but with a tendency to be clingy and fretful. At age 4, Jeffrey became fascinated with dead animals, often collecting and dissecting them. This morbid curiosity would become a persistent theme throughout his life. The family dynamic was strained, with Lionel's absence and Joyce's anxiety creating tension. When Jeffrey was 8 years old, the family moved to Doylestown, Ohio. This change disrupted his social life and exacerbated existing issues. Jeffrey struggled to make friends in the new town, and his isolation deepened. His fascination with death and the dead intensified, and he began collecting and preserving insects and animals. Jeffrey would often go out in the woods next to his house and find animals to dissect himself. He wasn't much into biology itself, but rather the act of cutting animals and preserving them. Because of this, the house was often surrounded by the odd smell of dead animals. But it was his dad who really got this interest to emerge. Jeffrey was once brought a raccoon home by his dad so they could dissect it together, but with the intentions of educational purposes. But the father didn't know that his boy, who was being taught all this, would later become one of the maddest serial killers ever. Jeffrey's family life was marked by tension and instability. His parents' marital issues and frequent arguing created a stressful environment. Lionel's workaholic nature and absence contributed to Jeffrey's sense of abandonment. Joyce's anxiety and depression affected her parenting style, often making Jeffrey feel responsible for her emotional well-being. This blurred the boundaries between parent and child, potentially contributing to Jeffrey's emotional stunting. As Jeffrey entered adolescence, his behavior became more concerning. He began drinking and engaging in self-destructive behavior, such as cutting himself. He exhibited fascination with violence, especially toward animals. His collection and preservation of animals became more sophisticated, using chemicals from his father's laboratory. These warning signs were largely ignored or downplayed by his family. But there was another huge sense of abnormalcy in Dahmer. After dissecting the animals, he would masturbate while looking at the shining internal organs of those animals. And not too long after, he started thinking the same way about men. One day, Jeffrey had this strange intention of attacking a man who jogs around their block every day. Jeffrey thought he was handsome and would make his weird fantasies become real after attacking him. But the man didn't run the day Jeffrey planned to attack. Jeffrey Dahmer attended Revere High School in Richfield, Ohio in 1974. As a freshman, he struggled to fit in. Classmates described him as quiet, shy, and odd. He had few friends and was often bullied. He also collected newspaper clippings of murders and accidents. Throughout high school, Jeffrey's social struggles persisted. He was unable to form meaningful relationships or connect with peers. His awkwardness and lack of confidence made him a target for bullies. Teachers saw him as unremarkable, and his grades suffered due to his lack of motivation. But one of the few bright spots in Jeffrey's high school life was his interest in music. He played the clarinet in the school band and briefly considered pursuing music as a career. However, his lack of confidence and social anxiety hindered his ability to excel. Jeffrey's relationships with his parents deteriorated. the couple's disagreements and arguments became frequent. Lionel, feeling trapped and frustrated, began to distance himself from the family. In 1977, Lionel and Joyce Dahmer's marriage reached a breaking point. They began divorce proceedings, which were finalized in 1978. The divorce was messy, with both parties accusing each other of misconduct. Lionel remarried shortly after, leaving Joyce feeling abandoned and bitter. The divorce devastated Jeffery, who felt abandoned and rejected by his father. He became increasingly withdrawn and isolated, struggling to cope with the loss of his family unit. And he grew closer to his grandmother, Catherine Dahmer. Joyce moved into her relative's house with Jeffrey's brother David, leaving Jeffery alone. And this is the time when Jeffery, living alone in his house, really became a monster. The divorce had severe consequences for Jeffrey's mental health and behavior. His fascination with death and violence escalated, and he began to act out, committing minor crimes and engaging in self-destructive behavior. In his final year of high school, Jeffrey's isolation deepened. He stopped attending classes regularly and spent most of his time alone or with his family. Jeffrey Dahmer graduated from Revere High School in 1978, but his future looked bleak. He had no plans for college, and his relationships with his family were strained. June 18, 1978. Jeffrey, living alone in his house and had recently turned 18, now met with a hitchhiker who was planning to go to an evening concert. The 19-year-old Stephen Hicks told Jeffrey that he didn't have the money to go there, which is why he was hitchhiking. Jeffrey tells him that he was also going there. He convinces Stephen to come over to his house to pass some time till the evening. After having some beer, Stephen tells Jeffrey that they should leave for the concert. But Jeffrey has other plans. He doesn't actually want to go to the concert. He wants Stephen. Jeffrey furiously strikes Stephen with a 10 kilograms dumbbell. He didn't quite go unconscious yet, so Jeffrey strangled him to death. He claimed that he was extremely confused about the situation and couldn't comprehend what just happened. But with those strange sexual thoughts he had, he did an intercourse with Hicks's body, and after he was done, he dissected his body, hammered his bones, burnt them into ash, and threw it into his backyard. He also put Stephen's flesh in an acid and flushed it down the toilet. During this time, Jeffrey's father, Lionel, had moved in with his new fiancée, but he still cared about Jeffrey. He sent Jeffrey to Ohio State University so he could qualify and get his life settled. But only 6 months had he spent in the university and got kicked out. He started drinking too much and would scream and yell at night in his room, which obviously had consequences. So Lionel took him off studies and sent him into the U.S. Army, where he would train as a medical specialist. And this obviously included the study of various medicines and drugs. After his training, he was sent to Germany with other soldiers. While being in the Armed Combat Medical Specialist post, he thought of negatively taking advantage of these drugs. He took the drugs and forced himself on 2 of his soldier friends. And so, he got kicked out of the army as well. March 24th, 1981. Jeffrey returned from Germany to US, but he knew that his father would be extremely fed up if he stepped home like that. So he decided to run off to Miami, where he would work as a butcher. But only 6 months pass, and he gets kicked out. Again, because of his alcohol consumption. So finally, in September, he returned home, but his father got extremely furious and didn't even want to look at him. So he sent him to his grandmother, Catherine Dahmer's house. There, he still drank a lot, but he got a job and managed to somewhat help his grandmother financially. But one day, he got arrested for exposing himself in front of women and children in a park. When he was asked about this by his father, he said, "I was just peeing there, and they showed up themselves." By 1984, he was feeling quite lonely, so he would drink and try to connect with random people. But obviously, no one liked that. So he started going to the gay bars of Milwaukee, where he drank with men and took them to the nearby bathhouses. But Jeffrey couldn't have enough of it, and his old fantasies slowly started creeping back. He liked cold bodies. He often mixed sleeping pills in the other person's drink, so when they got unconscious, he could do stuff with them without their consent. The bathhouses immediately canceled his membership after learning about his drugging. But this didn't stop him. He didn't mind paying for much more expensive private hotels. On the 15th of September, 1987, he met Stephen Tuomi in a bar. He took him to his hotel room, drugged him, and pleasured himself. But the next morning when he woke up, he saw Stephen lying dead on the bed with blood scattered. He did get scared, but he couldn't leave the body in the hotel room, and neither could he take it out easily. So he bought a large suitcase, stuffed Stephen in it, and checked out with ease. He took the body back to his grandmother's basement, where he had built a workshop. He carefully removed parts of Stephen's body and disposed of them similarly to how he had handled a situation years before. However, he decided to keep Stephen's head because he found it attractive. This was the first time in 9 years that Jeffrey had encountered human anatomy since the previous incident. Jeff met a young man named James Dockstader outside a store on January 16, 1988. He offered him $50 for some photos, which seemed like a lot of money at the time. Unfortunately, after James went with him, Jeff harmed him and made a terrible decision, leading to James never returning home. A few months later, on March 24, 1988, Jeff hurt another person, continuing his harmful actions. Richard Guerrero. Now, since Jeffrey was bringing random men in the house, his grandmother got suspicious that he might be gay. Obviously, she was from the older days and was not going to accept such a thing. But she also never saw those men return, so she got concerned that Jeffrey might be harming them. Furthermore, there was this awful smell of flesh lingering in the house. He always came up with excuses and told her that he was doing taxidermy in his so-called workshop. Another day, he met a man named Ronald Flowers struggling with his car. He brought him home and drugged him through a coffee. After he was done drinking it, they got into an argument. Hearing the noise, Catherine came downstairs to the living room. Ronald didn't go unconscious, and looking at his condition, Catherine worryingly spent the entire night with him. The next morning, Ronald strangely woke up at a bus stop. It's unclear how he got there, but he immediately went to the police, told them that he got drugged. But since Jeffrey was a white man, being complained about by a black man, they ignored Ronald. This shows how many lives the police could have saved if they did their job. The poor grandmother, seeing random men being brought home and smelling flesh all day, couldn't stand Jeffrey any longer and simply kicked him out. Jeffrey soon found a cheap apartment in the Northwest Street. Only 2 weeks after he moved in, he met a 13-year-old boy, Keeson Synthesomphone. He drugged Keeson the same way, but Keeson somehow managed to escape this death trap. Now Jeffrey finally gets arrested, but there are still a few days in the completion of the sentence, and in these few days, he meets another guy, Anthony Lee Sears. He drugged him, did the thing, disposed of the body, but like Stephen Tuomi, he preserved his head because he seemed handsome. The same year, 1989, he was sentenced to 1 year in jail with 5 years of probation. He did get to keep his job, and after serving 1 year, he got released in 1990 and bought his final apartment. The apartment in which he was about to commit most of his crimes. He bought a Polaroid camera, with which he would take pictures of his dead victims. Also, since he was living alone, he decided to preserve or save more body parts and bones. After he moved in, he met Raymond Lamont Smith on May 20th, killed him. The same month, he called over one of his co-workers, Edward Smith, killed him. Jeffery knew what he was doing is wrong, and he would have to carry huge punishment for his acts. But he couldn't control himself. 3 months later, he met Ernest Miller in a gay bar on who he used the same $50 technique. He drugged Ernest, but it didn't make him unconscious, so he tried to punch Jeffery and run away. But Jeff picked up a butcher knife and stabbed his throat. Ernest was quite muscular, so Jeffery kept his heart and a part of the thigh in the fridge, which he would later eat. In September, he met David Thomas and offered him $50 for pictures. Now this was his first victim who had a child. Jeffery did hesitate killing him quite a bit, but he couldn't control himself due to his habits. So the procedure continued regardless. He mixed sleeping pills in the drink and killed him. For the next 5 months, he didn't even try to meet with anyone or go to bars, probably because of his guilt of killing a father. As a matter of fact, he tried to reconnect with his father. But only 5 months passed, and he returned to his monstrous normal life. He met Curtis Strader in February of 1991 at a bus stop. He asked him to take photos in exchange for money, took him to the apartment, and killed him. He kept his genitals in the freezer. Only a month later, he met Errol Lindsay, on whose head he heartlessly poured acid. Errol couldn't bear the pain and died on the spot. You've already heard so many names and might be starting to zone out. But remember, all these names were once human lives and could have still been alive today if such a man didn't exist. A few weeks after Errol, Anthony Hughes. May 27, 1991, Conorak Synthesophone, the younger brother of his victim, Keeson, from 3 years ago. Conorak had a huge possibility of escaping this, but was left to die due to the stupidity of the cops, again. Jeffery left Conorak, drugged at home, and went to get some alcohol. While he was out, Conorak managed to escape the apartment and get his neighbor's help. She was a black lady. When Jeffery returned, he saw the police, his neighbor, and Conorak outside. When Jeffery was asked about this, he came up with a story and excuses, which were believed. He told the cops that Conorak was his boyfriend, and they got really drunk at a party. Conorak was in a bad shape due to the drugs and couldn't talk. So they took him back inside and left. And they didn't believe the lady, even though she told them about the trouble. After Conorak, he killed Matt Turner on June 13th. July 5th, Jeremiah Weinberger. Jeffery poured boiling water in his mouth to see if he survives. He had basically turned into an animal at this point. The 13th of July, 1991, Oliver Lacey. And on 19th, Joseph Breithoft was killed. That's 3 lives in a single month. Every time, everything worked in Jeffery's favor. He was getting away with all the murders. Out of all the crimes he committed, only one of his victims reported him to the police as of yet. But Jeffery did not stand out as a clear culprit. Most of his victims were African Americans, and we cannot deny the fact that this may also be the reason why police did not take their reports seriously and arrest Dahmer for his crimes. But this was soon about to change because Jeffery was about to meet Tracy Edward. July 22nd, 1991. Jeffery was again searching for his next prey in a gay bar in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. he saw Tracy dancing on the dance floor. He approached Tracy and offered him drinks. Then he invited him to his apartment. Jeffery was following his normal procedure. He made a drink for Tracy back at his apartment, and as usual, he mixed sleeping pills in the drink. Tracy drank the drink, and he passed out. But when Tracy woke up, he saw that he was in Jeffrey's bed, naked. Jeffrey's bedroom was smelling really bad, and Jeffrey had put the TV onto the max volume so that no one could hear what he was about to do. Tracy's hands were handcuffed, and he saw Jeffrey approaching him. He saw that Jeffrey had a chainsaw in his hands and understood that he was in deep trouble. So Tracy told Jeffrey that he is his friend, so they should both watch this movie together. Obviously, he was doing this to delay and try to escape whatever Jeffrey was trying to do with that chainsaw in his hands. Well, Jeffrey agreed, and they started watching the movie. When they both were sitting together, Jeffrey slowly placed his head on Tracy's shoulder and started to hear his heartbeat. Tracy was trying to find the perfect moment for his escape, and this didn't seem too bad. Tracy punched Jeffrey and ran away. And after coming out of Jeffrey's home, Tracy ran for at least 6 blocks. Eventually, he found a police car, and he told everything to the police. He brought the police back to Jeffrey's apartment. And after investigating Jeffrey's apartment, the police found different Polaroids and pictures of the victims. They also found a chainsaw and other tools which he had used to cut open his victims. They also found the container in which he used to put the bodies in acid to dispose off. They also found a skull and a liver of one of his victims, which Jeffrey had put in his fridge to preserve.
Not because I was angry with them, not because I hated them, but because I wanted to keep them with me. And as my obsession grew, I was saving body parts such as skulls and skeletons, and eventually I did turn to cannibalism.
After all this, Jeffrey attacked a policeman with a stick as he was trying to run away for the last time. But the second policeman caught Jeffrey, after which Jeffrey told the police just one thing: "For what I did, I should be dead."
And sir, would you tell us your name and spell your last name for us?
Tracy Edwards, Edwards.
Mr. Edwards, you're going to ask you to speak up very loudly into the microphone.
Okay.
I would like to know, in what state do you reside at the present time?
Louisiana.
And how old are you, sir?
32.
32?
Right.
And you are single?
Yes.
You were in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on July the 22nd, 1991?
Yes.
And at or about that time, on that late afternoon, did you have occasion to see a person that you knew at that time or subsequently learned was a fellow by the name of Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes.
And you know that Mr. Dahmer you're speaking about is the defendant in this case to my right, correct?
Yes.
And that made a record I show the identification.
Sir, would you indicate where Mr. Dahmer is seated in the courtroom?
It's over there.
Right in the middle between my two associates?
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
The record should reflect the defendant's been identified.
Now, Mr. Edwards, you and I met for the first time last evening,
Yes.
and you came up from Louisiana at my request with your attorney,
Right. That's
Mr.
correct.
Syed, S-Y-E-D, Salet, S-A-L-E-T.
That's correct.
And you came up here to testify to the events, as you recall them, that occurred on the late afternoon, early evening, early morning hours of July the 22nd and the morning of July the 23rd, 1991.
That's correct.
So that you know, Mr. Edwards, your name is known to the jury because there has been testimony concerning what happened to you and at the apartment of Mr. Dahmer. Do you understand?
Cool. Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
Where did you know Mr. Dahmer by name prior to that date?
I've seen him a couple of times before then. I didn't know his name personally.
All right, did you ever talk to him before that date?
Speaking to him, saying hello as he passed by. Yeah.
Just casual, friendly?
Casual, yeah, friendly.
Hellos.
Hellos, yeah.
Where was it that you saw him in the late afternoon, early morning hours of July the 22nd?
Grand Avenue Mall.
And that was in Milwaukee,
Correct.
downtown on Wisconsin Avenue.
Wisconsin, correct.
Were you with somebody or were you alone?
A couple of her friends, yeah.
Okay, so the record is absolutely clear. You are not a homosexual, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay. Have any further conversation with you and your friends?
Yeah, he was just talking. He said he was a professional photographer. He usually pays people for pictures and stuff like that if anybody was interested in making money at that time.
To have to pose for pictures?
Yeah.
Did he describe the kind of pictures that you were going to be posing for if you chose to take him up on the offer?
He said nude.
Nude.
Right.
Now, after he said that to you, what did you and your friends do?
They were just talking, discussing it, you know, seeing what was going on, you know.
And was it going to be the three of you and Mr. Dahmer were going to stay together, or was it agreed upon that one or others of you were going to go with Mr. Dahmer, or was there no agreement?
They were going to meet up with us eventually later on that evening.
Meet up with who?
Jeffrey at his apartment, but he gave them the wrong address at that time.
Okay, so after getting in the apartment, can you generally describe the apartment, both the apartment that you saw then and the apartment that the other parts of the apartment you saw? Tell the jury what the apartment was like.
It was like normal, pretty decent apartment, had nice things in it. You know, it had certain boxes sitting on the front, neurotic acid boxes. I asked him about it. He said he cleaned bricks with those, you know, which you can use that type of acid to clean bricks, so I brought that also.
And where did you sit, if you did?
Okay, at the end of the sofa, like I am now, this is a sofa. I was at this end, and he was at this side.
Referring to the jury, I mean, the witness box, if that were a sofa, he would be at that end. That is the end where he's seated on the witness stand, which would be the part closest to the judge. Is that right?
That's correct.
And where did Mr. Dahmer, what did he do?
He sat like here, maybe a couple feet from me.
Were you in fear of anything at that time?
Not at all.
Okay, and what did the two of you do?
Okay, he said we were still talking, chatting, you know. He asked me, was I interested in doing the photography? You know, I told him I was still contemplating, so therefore he offered me a beer and a rum and Coke mixture at that point.
About this posing, you weren't sure you were going to do it.
Right.
How much had you been offered to do the posing?
$100.
Okay. And when he brings you the beer, he brings you rum and Coke?
Yeah, he brings the beer first, and then he brings the rum and Coke.
How big of a glass?
Maybe that big.
About 4 inches high?
About 4 inches, yeah, 3.5, something like that.
Did you ever taste it?
Yeah, I took a few sips.
Was it strong, weak, medium, or just about right?
I'm not a big liquor drinker, so it didn't taste that good to me. I don't.
Didn't taste good to you? You don't know if it was strong or not?
Strong or not, no, because I turn to the right, like the fish tank is here, I'm turning all the way over here.
You turn to your right to look at it?
To look at the fish tank, right.
And when that happens, what happens to you?
All of a sudden, a handcuff and a knife is pulled on me. Yeah.
Handcuff is placed on your body? Where?
On my left wrist.
And you see a knife?
Yeah, the knife, yeah.
Now, at that moment, what do you do?
First, I feel fear, then I ask him what's going on. You know, this is not necessary, you know, to pull a knife on me at that
Are you
point.
afraid?
Yes.
Do you have any reason to know why he did that?
None whatsoever.
Did you have any idea at that time it was going to happen?
No.
Tell me about his demeanor at that time when you looked and realized he had a knife and you in a cuff. You were only cuffed on one wrist.
One wrist, yeah.
What was happening to the other part of the handcuff?
Okay, he had it in his hand.
He was holding it.
Holding that in the wrist, yeah.
Where was the knife? In the other hand?
The knife was like he had here. The knife was in his hand. He had it on me like this.
Let the record reflect he was holding the knife in his right hand as he showed it, holding the cuff in his left hand. Is that right?
Right.
And your left hand is cuffed.
Yeah, right.
Where do you have the knife? What kind of a knife was it?
It was like a military knife, a machete or some type. Yeah, he had it lowered right up under my rib cage, you know. Like
So
in
he
the
had
back, somewhere in the back here.
He had it pointed at your rib cage.
Yeah.
Did you feel it? Touch
Yeah,
it?
he had it on me. He had it against my body.
At the time that you look at him and you say, what's going on? You don't have to do this. What happens to Mr. Dahmer? What's he like?
It's like Not the same person that we met at Grand Avenue Mall.
How does he different?
His face structure seemed different, you know, his body structure is like it wasn't him anymore, you know? It's like it was a totally different guy there.
So he told you if you didn't do what he told you to do, he'd hurt you.
He'd hurt me.
What'd you do? What happened? Tell us what happened step by step as best you can remember.
And then all of a sudden he kind of calms down, you know? And then he said he has a key in the bedroom, so we proceed to the bedroom.
The key to the handcuffs.
Right.
So you believed he was going to take them off?
Yeah, at that point I had to go along with this guy, you know, and then if I had to find out, so I walked back there with him. He kind of guides me back there, you know.
Guides you back with the cuff and the knife?
Yeah, right.
And you go into the bedroom?
Right.
What do you see in the bedroom?
A big, about 50, 60 gallon drum barrel, whatever.
Do you ever see a 50, 60 drum barrel in anybody's bedroom
No.
before?
Not at all.
Do you have any idea? Did you ask him what it was?
No, at that point I asked no questions at that time. You know.
Was there a bed in that room?
Yes.
How was the bed? Was it made, unmade? What did
It
what
was,
option?
it was unmade.
What did you see on the bed, if anything?
Something like a stain of whatever, yeah, on the bed.
What did you think it was?
At that point in time, I wasn't sure.
What did you do when you got in the bedroom as he's holding on to the cuff and the knife? What did you do?
Studied us talking, trying to be friends with him, you know.
Did you remain standing? Did you sit down?
Oh, he made me sit down at that point. We both sit on the bed.
Was it at the foot of the bed, side of the bed, head of the bed?
Maybe halfway between.
Well, what did you think about him as a person? What impression was made on your mind of this fella that you're dealing with here?
Yeah, that at times he wasn't himself, and then at times he was like a nice guy, you know. He would come and go different times, you know, throughout the whole time. Then he would like sit, being quiet at times, watching a movie, wanting me to watch the movie, you know, and just doing little tanning sounds, you know.
Did you observe him watching the movie and how he would react to the movie?
Right, he would like just start rocking back and forth when he, you know, certain parts of the movie or whatever.
You have to say, what did he say, Madam?
He was like chanting at certain times and rocking back and forth, right?
Did you at any time go to the bathroom, use the washroom, prior to the time that he asked you to lay down on the floor?
No.
All right, tell us what happened when, how did that happen that he told you to lay down on the floor?
You know, he told me to lay down face down, put both of my hands behind my back, because he changed again at that point, like he got more aggressive at that time.
Okay, now, but tell us, did he still have the knife out?
Yes, he still had the knife.
And what did you do?
Okay, I kind of like laid on my sides. For some reason, I guess God told me not to lay flat down or let this person handcuff me, so I didn't.
So you were trying to stop that from happening, but you got down on the floor.
Right.
What did he do?
He kind of laid across me, put his head across my chest at that point.
And what was he doing with his head?
Pardon me?
What did it appear to you he was doing with his head? What was he trying to do?
Like he was listening to my heart, because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point.
He said he was going to eat your heart?
Yes, that's correct.
Did he still have the knife?
Yeah.
Where was the knife pointed?
When I was on the floor, he had it pointed at my groin area at that time.
One knife?
He had several, and then he slipped one. I managed to slide one underneath the bed. And I guess during a point of time through an ordeal, he didn't know where the knife was, so I didn't know if he felt that was a threat or not.
So he still had a knife, you're on the floor. How long does he lay on top of you trying to hear your heart as you've described it?
Maybe a minute, minute and a half.
And then what did you do then?
I knew something was about to happen, so I suggested that I go to the bathroom. I had to use the bathroom at that
And
time.
what did he do?
He kind of guided me to the bathroom.
So when you say he guided, you still had hold of your handcuff?
Yes.
And you went to the bathroom?
Right.
Did you urinate?
Yeah.
Were you able to utilize your own zipper, or did he touch you at all?
Touched me in no way. Didn't attempt to look. He just held me in back, you know.
So in other words, he didn't try to look at what your penis like or anything?
Not at all.
So after urinating, did you think that you were going to be the victim of, did he ask to engage in any homosexual acts with you?
None whatsoever.
Okay, so now you leave the bathroom and what happens?
Okay, then we go back into the bedroom, you know. It was like different time spans. We were talking about him losing his job. Then he would come to the person that I was first with, you know. And then at certain points he would change. You know, if he'd ask me to put both of my hands behind my back and I wouldn't, you know, do it, I would talk to him. I'd tell him, you can trust me, you know, you don't have to do this. And that would calm him down a little bit. You
He
know?
had the knife the whole time.
Right,
He's watching the movie and he becomes very interested in the movie.
right.
You don't do anything, just sit there.
Just sit there and be quiet.
And then he would start conversation with you again.
Yeah, he was like you're gonna have to do this and that, you know. Then he told me at a point I was gonna have to kill him, or either he was gonna have to kill me at one point.
Were you and he drinking during this time?
No. And then I just sat on the couch and he just started going out of himself again. Yeah.
Going out of himself?
Yeah, he was like paying me no attention at that time.
Like he wasn't there?
He started the chanting again, and it's like just sitting there, you know. And then I just, for some reason, I said, well, I need to go to the bathroom again, and he didn't follow me at that point. So I reached up, I got up, and then I hit him, and I ran out.
So you hit him.
Right.
Did you have any other belongings there?
I have my bag right there at the end of the couch. I sit in exactly the same place that I sit when I went in there.
What'd you do, son?
I hit him, and I ran towards the door, and he was right there, tried to grab me, get me back in there.
And what happened?
Then I made it outside.
So he wasn't able to bring you back in?
Bring me back in there, no.
He tried.
He tried.
And as you left that apartment, as you got away from him, I'm going to ask you again, what impressions were made on your mind by the conduct of Jeffrey Dahmer, by the actions of Jeffrey Dahmer, by the manner, expressions, and conversations of Jeffrey Dahmer that you observed? Can you give us some words?
It's like I told the policeman that this freak, this crazy guy, was trying to hurt me. Yeah.
Did you run out of the building?
Yes, I did.
Did you summon help?
Yes,
Milwaukee Police Department?
that's correct.
Did they come back there with you to the apartment?
Right.
Did you eventually go back into the apartment with the Milwaukee police officers?
Yes.
And then he was arrested.
Right.
You gave a statement to the Milwaukee police a few hours later?
Yeah. Guess you could say a few hours, yeah.
I had you come to Wisconsin to testify.
That's correct.
Other than your expenses, you're not being paid anything,
No.
correct? Is that true?
That's true.
Thank you, Mr.
17 dead people over a decade-long period. Everyone wanted answers, and Jeffrey was ready to give them. A 60-hour-long interview with Jeffrey Dahmer was held in which he answered every question honestly. Due to this interview, we know the details of these murders. Jeffrey did not hide anything from any interviewer. Neither did he have any regret while telling the truth. Jeffrey's family tried to help Jeffrey by claiming that he was mentally unstable, but Jeffrey had accepted his fate. And he also accepted in court that he had killed all of those men. He was a serial killer who did not just kill a few people. He killed a total of 17 men, out of which most were African Americans. And because of the media, Jeffrey was getting popularity. And due to all of these interviews with Dahmer, somewhere between this popularity, the victims' stories were suppressed. Jeffrey even got fan letters from some people because of his honesty during the interviews. But among this popularity, nobody was paying attention to the victims' families.
My name is Rita Isbell, and I'm the oldest sister of Errol Lindsay. Whatever your name is, Satan, I'm mad. This is how you act when you are out of control. I don't want to ever see my mother have to go through this again. Never, Jeffrey. Jeffrey, I hate you, mother. I hate you. This is out of control. Don't me, Jeffrey. I kill you. Look at me, mother. I can kill you.
Punch him really fast.
I can kill you.
But in the end, the court decided that death will be too easy for him. So they gave him a 9-year life imprisonment, meaning in prison for 9 lives. After spending time in jail, it was appearing that Jeffrey was improving. He was not disturbing anyone, and he was behaving well. In fact, he started to believe in God during prison, that he got baptized in prison, and he took an oath that he will never do any bad ever again.
I feel so bad for what I did to those poor families, and I understand their rightful hate. I know I will be in prison for the rest of my life. I know that I will have to turn to God to help me get through each day. I should have stayed with God. I tried and failed and created a Holocaust. Thank God there will be no more harm that I can do.
But after 1 week of getting baptized, Jeffrey got killed by his inmate, Jesse Anderson, on the morning of the 28th of November, 1994. Jesse wasn't happy with this sudden bright change in Jeffrey's demeanor, and he said that God sent him to kill Jeffrey.
Do you remember when you learned that your father murdered Jeffrey Dahmer?
Yes. It was about 10, I saw it on TV, and that's how I found out, so.
Do you remember the first time that you heard the name Jeffrey Dahmer?
Heard it a lot growing up, that's all I heard. When I was young, I didn't know what it meant, obviously, but, you know, that name, you know, it's been around me for my whole life, so.
Slow down, my young friend. You think you can touch the sky? Where did it all go wrong? Where did it all go wrong? Slow down.